Go ahead.
Well, I guess it all started growing up in Oakland. Um, I lived on 103rd Avenue, but my grandma lived off 98th Avenue at Seminary. And I'd stay with her in the summertime. My mom and dad were always busy going off places because my dad was a musician. And I'd walk downtown, and go to this record shop called Lloyd's. And this brother would just be playing all this stuff for me. And I was just this kid about 11. And I always looked forward to being there because of the fact that this guy would play not just black music, but like Bebop Alula by Gene Vincent and stuff like that. He was just into all the music. So the one thing that I remember is late at night I snuck out because you could walk anywhere in those days in Oakland and it was fine. So I'm walking down what is International now, what was East 14th Street, and I'm at the door of this club and the doorman's standing there and I'm walking, trying to just get as close as I can to see. He said, "Young man, you can't go in there, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll let you stand right up in front of me for a few minutes and watch, okay?" I said, "Okay." And I remember it was Ike and Tina Turner. But it wasn't the era that a lot of people know Vegas. It was like when she was singing like blues stuff. I think they had Fool in Love. And I remember the guitar was real loud and everything, and he had this shimmer thing on it. That's why I remember it was a vibrato or something. So that's kind of that exposure that I got. My folks moved me out of Oakland to San Leandro, which is when I got my first room and I got my first bed, because we lived in a shack in Oakland, and I didn't get my first bed till I was about 13. So it was nice. San Leandro was a nice town and everything and stuff. So I'm going to school there, but if I hung out with the older kids that played music, I noticed that, wow, this is really cool. They were into all the hip music that was on KDIA. The radio was just all really cool stuff. But black music and, R&B was the rock and roll of that time. So I hung out with Benny, Reed, Carl Battaglia, and I stole the drummer from another band. His name is Jerry Garcia, not the one with the Grateful Dead. And I got a bass player, and we started, jamming and playing at the high school stuff and everything. But the great break was that Carl knew somebody in the Five Superiors, black vocal group. And they were on these shows at the Newark Pavilion. And it was like amazing because they wanted a backup band and they wanted us. And that's what that poster out there is. That's where we used to rehearse with the Five Superiors. And I'm telling you, man, they were so phenomenal. There was every voice in that band, in that group, was phenomenal. You had Corky, who had this high soprano, kind of like Prince. He could go up there and scream. You had Corky, who sounded like the lead singer in the Flamingos. You had AC, who had a sandpaper scratch like David Ruffin. You had Ralph that had the bass voice. And then, I forget the name of the fifth guy, but it was phenomenal. So we're backing them up, and we're playing at these auditoriums, and they knew that we could play their music the way they wanted it to be played. All the parts to make them do their show. And Richard Berry was on the show, the guy that wrote Louie Louie. That was on the radio. That was the hippest version I ever heard. I never liked the King's Men doing it because Richard Berry had this groove, man. He'd be out there with a group, boom, 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 and everybody just swooned to that groove. So that was a great experience. And if it hadn't have been for that, then I wouldn't have got the champagne of gigs, the Moose Club.